Hello and welcome back to another Rush Duel Links video. Yesterday we had the TGS stream, we went over it, we did a little bit of a react. We didn't have a lot of time to really go through everything, so what I thought we'd do today is have a bit more of an in-depth look at everything that was shown off, kind of talk about our thoughts and feelings about it, maybe a few predictions, maybe some wish lists. We'll kind of see where this takes us. But first of all, TGS 2024 Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush boxes and structure decks revealed. So the Tokyo Game Show did reveal to us quite a few new cards, as well as some more specifics. So we got the new world campaigns. So here we saw includes items for Chronicle cards, Crystal Processing, Gold Border, and Gold Name Color. Looks like we get different materials for each of them, which is pretty interesting. So by the looks of it, we'll be able to use these as kind of affixes, I guess, to attach them to our cards, to give them their kind of bling, so we can more easily personalize our cards. But more interestingly, we have our two Rush structure decks, as well as our two Rush mini boxes. So as you can see down here, 3 copies of the 2 new structure decks, Transam Universe and Hero Stage. And we'll also get 10 packs plus 1 UR from each of the 2 new mini boxes, Galactica Go Rush and Revolution Fusion. So as a lot of people did predict, it looks like we're getting a Light Galaxy structure deck, as well as the Hero structure deck that we did predict, as well as a box for both Go Rush and a separate box which is going to contain all of the new Fusion stuff for 7. So very, very exciting. For the Galaxy box, it looks like the face card of it is going to be Transamu Rhynak. I assume that's going to be a UR just because it is one of Udius's like signature cards. And on the hero structure, we do see Flame Wingman, and we already know this is going to be a UR, which is pretty cool. And then the face cards for each of the mini boxes are going to be Galactica Oblivion and Cyber End Dragon, which is pretty interesting. Having Cyber End Dragon as the face of the pack is probably to appeal to the speed players and anyone that's kind of a big GX fan, because I mean everyone likes Cyber Dragon. Who doesn't like Cyber Dragon? I love Cyber Dragon. But it probably would have been more thematically appropriate to put something like Seven's Paladin on there. But I do understand the marketing reason why you wouldn't. So something else to take note of is that mini boxes contain 40 cards. So 40 cards isn't a ton, but it's quite a lot, especially since we're getting 2 mini boxes, which means we are getting a grand total of 80 new cards just from those boxes alone. Now, typically, structure decks will give us around 4. Now, it's not a concrete rule, but usually it's somewhere between like 3 and 5. The average is usually about 4 new cards that are unique to those decks. So if we follow that rule, we'd then be getting an extra 8 cards on top, so that's 88, and then the level up rewards for 3 different characters. We don't know when we're getting yugioh. He might be day 1 on October 1st, he might be a few days later, he might be the week after, we're not entirely sure, but we're expecting to see a big chunk of new cards coming into the game, probably ending at something around 100. So mini boxes have 4 URs and 10 SRs, which means from the 2 boxes alone, we're going to be getting 8 ultra rares and 20 super rares, which is pretty exciting. So when we do take a look at the cards that we're about to look at, some of these could be level up rewards, they could be from the structure decks, or they could be from these boxes, and any that's a UR or an SR potentially is filling up one of those slots. So let's take a look at the cards shown on the stream/trailer. So first off, Galactica Oblivion. We already know this is going to be the face card of one of the boxes, so almost certainly a UR. Then we have Transamu Rhynak, whose English translation seems to be Transam Lynak, which I'm not the biggest fan of that translation. I think Transamu Rhynak was fine. I don't know why we've changed it, but sure. And also they've changed his flavor text from War to Zen, Maniac You Die, to Fight for the Light, Pure Finish. We did expect this to get changed because Maniac You Die probably wouldn't fly over here, but it's still a little bit sad to see. But yeah, this will almost certainly be a UR from the structure deck. Then we have Jointech Ace. This is a new 1500 machine vanilla. So I guess you'd play this maybe alongside Avant Wolf, depending on if we specifically need lights or not. But Jointech Ace, as we have mentioned in a few other videos, does have a few other cards that work with it. We'll go over those briefly because these are also on my wish list. I really, really want Jointech Hero. I cannot express to you how much I want Jointech Hero to be out immediately. Because this card, it's really cool. I think aesthetically it's really cool. Its effect is really cool. But it came out, I feel like, a little bit too late in the physical game. So although it has seen like a little bit of play, it's never been really competitive. But yeah, 2500 attack, obviously a fantastic stat, Earth Machine. During the turn, you normal summon this card by tributing Jointech Ace. we can send the top card of the deck to the graveyard. This card gains 1500 attack until the end of this turn, so big 4000 attack guy. Then you can add an Earth attribute machine type monster from your graveyard to your hand, so we can get back the Jointech Ace that we tributed to summon it. I think this is a really, really cool card, and I would really love to see this. And it also does combo with another card, that being Jointech Fighter, which is the fusion made up of 2 Jointech Aces. It's only level 6, so it doesn't really have any of that soft protection, but it's 2600 attack and 2600 defense, and we can take one level 7 Earth attribute monster from your graveyard and either add it to your hand or special summon it face up to your field. Then if that card was Jointech Hero, we can add Jointech Ace from our graveyard to our hand. Now, I think some people would argue that these cards would probably be a little bit too strong to come out right now, but the Jointech deck in general has always been a little bit weak, so I think actually making them strong, and maybe actually one of the best decks in the game for a bit, wouldn't be the end of the world, especially since the skills that we've gotten so far for Jointechs aren't looking super strong. So I think this would be a really, really cool set of cards to release. Then we have the Interstellime. So we did go over this card a little bit before, but this does have a support card that does basically get it back from the graveyard. Then we have Tamabot, which, again, we have spoken a little bit about this. We did mention before about Nico Tamabot, which is a fusion between 2 Tamabots. So we'll just go over this again quickly. Level 2, 2000 attack, 2000 defense. Your opponent draws 1 card and shows it, and then if the card is a monster, this card gains attack equal to the monster's attack until the end of this turn. So it's fine, but one card we didn't mention, and since we know we're getting Tamabot and we know we're going to have Bluetooth Burst Dragon, this card will technically be makeable. We'll have all the pieces for it. So this is Tamabot Burst Dragon. So this is a level 7, 2500 attack, 2500 defense. Send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard equal to the total number of Tamabots in both players' graveyards. So I guess if you're in the mirror, this will get extra effects. This card gains 1000 attack until the end of this turn. Then if you sent a monster with 1500 or less attack to the graveyard to meet the requirement, you can destroy one face-up monster with 1500 or more attack on your opponent's field. So it's nothing like crazy, but it's a nice monster, right? It's okay, it's part of the Tamabot archetype, and there are a lot more anime-only Tamabot cards that hopefully we will get in the physical game at some point, and that means eventually, hopefully, those cards will come to Duel Links as well. So next up we have Carpendra. There's nothing particularly interesting about this. It's only a 1400, it is another Earth Machine. Then we have Crafthor, which is even less going for it, it's 1100 attack. Then we have Vortex Shooter. This is a 1400 attack Light Galaxy. Unfortunately, this is probably not going to see much play because we're already going to be playing play sets of Transam Linak, assuming it has no restrictions on it. And then we'll also be playing, if we want more beaters, Bright Sentinel, which is a 1500 attack, which just immediately power creeps Vortex Shooter in every single way. But yeah, Bright Sentinel is an okay beater. 1500 attack is always nice. Then there's Crayon. This is a card we did also predict. If we have no other monsters on our field, we can add a light attribute Galaxy type normal monster from our graveyard to our hand. This turn you can only attack with Galaxy. That restriction shouldn't matter too much, and this card is really cool because we can get back a boss monster, or we can get back, for example, a Transam Linak and have a 1600 beater or just tribute fodder. So Crayon is really, really cool. Then we have Milky Wave Neo, and this card is basically worse than Galactica Oblivion in every way. Is the exact same level, is a different type, being wind. In some cases might be more useful, but for the most part is going to be worse. Having light is generally going to be better. And it does have 1500 less defense. But this is another level 7 normal monster, which means it's perfect to be used with Secret Order. And we do know we're getting Secret Order. We still don't know if we have any restrictions on this card yet. But assuming we can just play this at 3 copies, we can basically start spamming out our Milky Wave Neos and our Galactica Oblivions and be able to really bully our opponent. But we did skip over one card, Strange Traveler. If we have a face-up Galaxy-type normal monster on our field, send the top card back to the graveyard. One face-up monster in your opponent's field loses 500 attack. So that's fine. It's nothing super crazy. The body of this card is also okay. Like 1100 attack is not really bad. It's not really good either, but it's like fine. This card is decent enough because it has an okay body, as well as not needing to lose a card from your hand like something like Thunder the Thunder would need, so it's like, it's okay. And then last but not least, Meteor Charge. We've already spoken about this card a ton, and there is obviously a few skills that do work with this card, but being able to change your opponent's battle position and gain piercing is always going to be really, really good. So now we'll move on to the other cards that were shown off and their rarities. So first off, in the UR, we have Elemental Hero Flame Wingman. We already know we'll be getting this from the Structure deck, so we know where that's coming from. So Flame Wingman is a reasonably cool card, especially because with the skill, we can make this a lot easier because the skill lets us +1 and just find fusion, and that also works from the graveyard as well, so that's pretty good. As well as the fact that we can reduce our opponent's attack by 600, which means As long as our opponent has 2600 or less, we can still attack over it with Flame Wingman and then burn our opponent, which is pretty cool. Another thing to take note of is this burns for original attack, which means if we were to use, for example, Talismanic Seal Array and weaken a yugioh down to 2000 attack, we can clear it with Flame Wingman, get the 100 in, and then we will burn our opponent for 4000, because even though its current attack is 2000, its original attack is still 4000. So there's a lot that you can do with this card. The only negative is that even with the skill, we can't beat 27 plus. 27 we would crash, and then 28, which a lot of the new fusion monsters are, is too big. So we're going to have to play other ways to deal with cards like that, something like Talismanic Seal Array or something similar. I think on the stream they were playing Seven's Road Mage, so there are a few options available. Then there's Trap Hole. We already know from leaks that we'll be getting this as a bundle alongside the other bundle, which will give us 2 copies of Cyber Assault Dragon. Trap Hole, very, very powerful trap card, and will probably see play over Widespread, and in some cases we'll see play over Negate Attack. I think now you'll be trying to decide between those two. So Trap Hole might even come out already semi-limited, we'll have to wait and see. Next up, we have Rising Hero Argent, and this is a card again that we did predict was going to come out. So you can reveal a level 6 or 7 Warrior-type fusion monster in your X deck to your opponent, so we would show our opponent our Elemental Hero Flame Wingman, excavate the top 4 cards of our deck, and then we can add up to 2 excavated normal monsters whose names are mentioned as material on the monster revealed to meet the requirement to your hand. So basically, we reveal the top 4 cards, and then if we have an Avian or a Burst Dinatrix, we can add up to 2 of those to our hand. So we could add double Burst Dinatrix, double Avian, or 1 of each. A lot of the time, you're probably not going to hit much off of this, but using something like Avian Spell Tactics, we can force this effect to work, right? If we use Avian Spell Tactics, pop one of our opponent's back row, put Avian back to the top of our deck, then use Rising Hero Argent, we know that one of the top 4 cards of our deck is an Avian, so we will definitely plus off of it. Then if we have a Burst Dinatrix there as well, or another Avian, we just get extra value. Being able to get these cards back to our hand is always going to be really, really good. Just any form of plussing is always really, really strong, especially when it comes to fusion summoning. But also we can use them as tribute fodder for Rising Hero Tantalum. So this is a card, I thought this card might come out, but I thought Neos would be more likely just because Neos has more presence, I suppose. But Rising Hero Tantalum is a surprisingly good boss monster. Level 7, 2500 attack. Send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. This card gains 400 attack, so it becomes 29, which is very relevant because that will attack over a lot of the fusion monsters. Notably, it won't attack over Dragia Star F, and it obviously still cannot clear maximums. But then, if we have a face-up warrior-type fusion monster on our field, we can return 1 face-up level 8 or lower monster from your opponent's field to the owner's hand. So the way to get max value for this is obviously to use it on something like a fusion monster, but there aren't going to be that many level 8 or lower fusions. I suppose the most common one is probably going to be the actual Flame Wingman itself, so in the mirror, you'll be able to get rid of your opponent's Flame Wingman. Otherwise, this can brick your opponent. We can just put a boss monster back in their hand, and that in itself could be enough to just give them no plays or make their next turn a bit awkward. But sometimes this will also do nothing, right? You obviously also don't want to use this effect on cards that have entered the battlefield effects. So for example, Jointech Rex, we probably don't want to put in our opponent's hand if we have back row we want to protect, because they'll just summon it again and pop our back row. But there is one other Rising Hero that actually has not been shown off yet, and that is Rising Hero Menakaita. So this is the only Rising Hero that we haven't had confirmed for Duel Links, so there is an okay chance we get this card, especially since it's not actually like super crazy. Like, it's still a good card, especially for right now in Duel Links. In the modern game, this card is actually a little bit weak in my opinion. We can place 1 card from our hand on the bottom of our deck to add a Rising Hero Argent or Rising Hero Tantalum from our graveyard to our hand. So this doesn't plus us because we have to basically pay for the skill. So at 1-for-1s, but it does give us a little bit of consistency by letting us toolbox the graveyard a little bit. It's fine. There's nothing like super bonkers about this, but it will make the Rising Hero engine a little bit more consistent. And it's the only Rising Hero not announced yet, so I thought I would mention it. But that is it for the URs. So now we'll go down and check out the SRs. So first up, we have Update Wyvern, which is garbage. This is a level 5, 1800 attack monster, 1600 defense monster. It's just straight up bad, and we probably shouldn't play this card. I don't think this card ever saw play. This is probably going to be like a level up reward for Uamu. It's just going to be one of those dead filler cards. I don't expect this to do anything, but you never know, right? So then we have Imaginary Reactor. This is a brand new card that, much like Ancient Gear Golem, is not actually out yet. If we have 10 or more cards in our deck, we can send the top 2 cards of the deck to the graveyard. This card's name becomes Imaginary Actor until the end of your opponent's next turn, so that means it can never be used for all the fusions. Then you can place 1 monster reincarnation from your graveyard to the bottom of your deck, and if you do, draw 2 cards. So we do have the skill which can send monster reincarnation to our graveyard, so then we can use Imaginary Reactor, and basically its effect becomes, well, I'm now the fusion material, and I'm going to draw 2. And drawing 2 is actually insane. We've had a lot of +1 cards see a ton of play in Duel Links already. This will be the first +2 card, and that's really, really good. Imaginary Reactor could potentially make Metarion, which historically has been a bit of a weak deck, hasn't really accomplished anything. Giving them a Pot of Greed built in might be enough to push them over the edge, especially with their skills that seem okay. Their skills don't seem like crazy busted, but if we get more modern support, this could go really hard. And one of those modern support cards that we could potentially get is Imaginary Leading Actor. So again, brand new card not released yet, but we can send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard. This card's name becomes Imaginary Actor, so once again we can use this for our fusions. Then we can add 1 light attribute normal monster with 500 defense, and notably all of the Metarion fusions use Imaginary Actor and a light attribute normal monster with 500 defense, just different named ones, and or 1 fusion from your graveyard to your hand, which means if we're able to summon Imaginary Leading Actor, it is an immediate fusion, right? Because he becomes half of it, we get the rest of it from the graveyard, bam, we have the fusion monster. So if we get Imaginary Leading Actor as well as the Imaginary Reactor, this deck could actually go kind of hard. Next up, we're going to talk about Ether Finder, because we know the fusion, but we'll talk about its materials first. So we can send 1 spell trap from our hand to the graveyard. That is already a requirement I'm not a big fan of. Losing a card from your hand sucks in general, but when it specifically has to be a spell trap, generally spell traps are very, very valuable, so we don't really want to give them up. Now, this is part of a combo that you're supposed to be sending fusion to the graveyard, which we'll talk about as we go through. But even so, I'm not a big fan of sending spell traps from the hand to the graveyard. 1 face-up monster on your field gains 300 attack to the end of this turn. Now, if this is the only monster we've got, 1300 is not a very relevant number, so that's not great. But then if fusion is in your graveyard, which again, ideally we've sent it to the graveyard with this effect, we can special summon an Ether Seeker from our graveyard face-up to our field. So Ether Seeker, another pretty poor statted monster. We can send 1 spell trap from our hand to the graveyard, and again, we've just sent, I guess, fusion to the graveyard for this, so now we have to send another spell trap if we want to do like this combo, which again is not ideal. 1 face-up monster on your opponent's field loses 300 attack to the end of this turn. Then if you have a fusion in your graveyard, you can destroy a spell trap. So popping a spell trap is actually not bad, but neither of these two really help get out their own fusion monster, and that is the Ether Fast Striker made using Ether Seeker and Ether Finder. So again, level 8, not the best. Obviously, we'd rather this was level 9. 2400 attack, not the best. We'd rather this was at least 25, but we can place 1 fusion from our graveyard on either the top or bottom of our deck. This card gains 600 attack to the end of the turn, so it boosts up to 300. We can put fusion back on top, so potentially we can do a fusion on the next turn. And then we can place a normal monster from our graveyard on top of our deck. So it's not going to help get another Ether Fast Striker out because it's made using 2 effect monsters, but this will help enable your other fusion monsters. I don't know how good this is going to be. This didn't really see any play, or not much at the very least, in the physical game. I don't think it's particularly good. But with the different card pool, with the skills, maybe there's something we can cook up with it. And then we have Elemental Hero Burst Denatrix and Elemental Hero Avian. Obviously, we needed to get these because we fused them into the Flying Wingman. There's not really much to say about them specifically. They're just in here as fusion material. And then we have the Star Restart. Place 1 card from a hand on the bottom of the deck. Special summon a level 5 or lower normal monster from your graveyard face up to your field. Then you can add a fusion from your graveyard to your hand. So notably, this card itself is obviously... we're going to lose this card when we play it. We also have to lose a card from our hand to put to the bottom of the deck, and then we get back a level 5 or lower normal monster, and we get back the fusion. So it's a 2 for 2. Does not plus us, but it can help us get our fusions out. So pretty good fusion generic card. I don't know if I'd call this a staple, but it's pretty good. And then we'll head down to our rares. And the first one we're going to talk about is a Muzi Howling Performer, made using a Muzi Performer and Howling Bird, so 2 low-level monsters. Level 7, 2500 attack. Place 1, a Muzi Performer or Howling Bird, so the 2 fusion materials, on the bottom of the deck. Inflict 800 damage. Not the craziest fusion monster, but I would assume we're getting this just to tide us over until they want to give us like the good psychic fusions later. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did the same with a warrior monster. Now, there are a lot of warrior fusion monsters, so I'm not sure which one we might get. We'll probably get something Gavin-esque to come out as well. And then we have Alpha Burn Drake. This card's kind of a throwaway. I mean, it's level 1 normal monster, so maybe Diabolic King Beetle, the beatdown deck, getting more tools. But there's nothing crazy to say about this card. It's pretty bad. Then we have the Imaginary Arc Turbo. We already knew we were getting this because of the skill, but this card can sometimes let you get in for lethal, I guess. It's not a super good card, but if we can play it as a one-of and we can use the skill to use it, maybe it'll be okay. Then we have a worrying card for me. This is Excutie Fermi. So to those of you that don't know, Excutie is an archetype that was very infamous in the physical game. Now, Excutie is a really cool archetype. The deck's pretty fun to play. A lot of the art on the cards is quite nice. But this was a pretty big tier 0 format. So the physical rush game has gone through a lot of tier 0 formats, and I think probably the most notorious one was Excutie format, because this deck just felt like it was on a completely different level to a lot of other decks. So Excutie is basically an archetype of all level 6 monsters. Some of them have the ability to cheat themselves out, and then other ones have the ability to cheat themselves out if we have other level 6 monsters out. So basically you just end up spamming a bunch of them. Now some of them you do have to just tribute summon out, but those ones typically will give you some sort of advantage, so like get a card back from the graveyard or something to make up for the fact that we've minus to get them out. Now a level 6 deck can sometimes just brick. If you don't draw into any of the cards that special summon themselves, then you can't really play the game, and the deck does tend to play like only those cards. I mean, it'll play generally like a couple of low levels, but typically it's just an entire deck of level 6s. But I thought I'd talk a little bit about this archetype because it does look like we are getting at least one of them. Now, we won't necessarily be getting a ton of them. This could be the only Executie we get, or we could just get this and like one more. But I thought I would mention it because Executies are very, very notorious. So an idea of one of the cards that can special summon itself is Prouty. So this is a level 6 plant monster, and that's another thing. All of the Executies are different types. So you can special summon this card from your hand, face up to your field by revealing one other level 6 monster with 500 defense in your hand. You can send the top card of it to the graveyard, gain 500 life points. So this card on itself, nothing too crazy, but this is like a starter, right? Then there's cards like Excutie Lilius, and this card actually did get limited down to 1 and has since been unlimited, but this deck had to get hit quite heavily because it was a tier 0 format, right? So this is a 2500 attack level 6 monster, and that in itself is enough to just make this insane, right? If we have a face-up level 6 monster with 500 defense on your field, we can special summon this card from your hand face up to your field. So quite a simple little effect, and then it has the continuous effect of your level 7 or higher monsters cannot attack. So this basically just says, please don't play actual boss monsters in the Executie deck. A lot of them have similar effects like this that do hinder level 7 and higher monsters. And then finally, we'll talk about Executie Scramble, because this is another card that was actually hit and limited down to 1, but again has since been unlimited. We can special summon a level 6 monster with 500 defense from your hand or graveyard face up to your field. This turn, your level 7 and higher monsters cannot attack. So this card is actually very similar to Secret Order, which we are now getting. Next up, we have Bubble Man, and Bubble Man is, I mean, we've already spoken a bit about this card. It's not very exciting. Its effect is almost never going to come off. In fact, I think if someone could actually just get this effect to happen, that would just be exciting in itself. There's maybe some way to break this card by like just playing a deck full of spell traps and just slinging them at your opponent, but I'm not really sure how we'd win with that deck, but you know, it exists. Then there's Ozone Layer. We can send one card from our hand to the graveyard. This turn, one face-up Galaxy type monster on your field cannot be destroyed by your opponent's trap cards. Not a big fan of sending a card from my hand to the graveyard, but depending on the meta we find ourselves in, if like a lot of the Mirror Force type effects do come out, then Ozone Layer could gain insane value because if everyone's playing Mirror Force or, you know, Dark Revelation or any of the other Mirror Force clones, something like this is just going to be really, really valuable. Next up, we have the Fusion spell. I mean, we knew we were getting this somewhere. I guess we still don't really know exactly where we're getting this, but we know it's going to be a rare, so it's probably going to be in the box, probably going to be in the Elemental Hero structure. We're probably going to have easy access to this card, and then we know that we're getting Interstellime as a level up reward from Udius. So then we go down to the end, the normals. So we have Aqua Sorcerer, the 1500 beta for spellcasters. I don't know if this card would see a ton of play, but at the very least you can just play all of the set if you want, just a bunch of 1500 betas. We have App Blizzard, a new 1500 dragon. This is actually like okay, especially a lot of the dragon skills do lock us to dragon, so if we do want more aggression, we can play App Blizzard. We then have the Imaginary Actor. We already knew we were going to get this card, because again, it's half all the Metarium fusions. Then there's Vortex Shooter again. Then we have the Aero Sorcerer. Now, this card might actually see some play, just because the win slot has always been a bit weird. People have started cutting Torna down quite a lot, so maybe Aero Sorcerer does see a little bit of play. Then there's Orbit Skater, just a 1400 defense galaxy. Not really much to say about it. There's Carpendra again, and then Earth Sorcerer. And this is another option for the SAR deck, I guess, if we don't want to be running our 1400 defenders. So the last thing we want to talk about is we do have some more announced cards. And I guess we'll start with the SR card, Fire Jester. This is a Pyro Fire monster. If we have a face-up level 5 or higher light attribute monster on our field, we can send the top card of it to the graveyard. One face-up level 8 or lower monster on your opponent's field loses 500 attack. It's fine. Stats aren't great. Being a Pyro monster is a little bit awkward because it's not going to work with the Pyro cards particularly well. A lot of those are fire. So, not really much to say about this, but the other card is quite interesting. This is the UR Metarian Landing Star, which has 2800 attack. We can send one card from hand to the graveyard, one face-up monster in your opponent's field loses 1500 attack and defense, or all face-up dinosaur monsters in your opponent's field lose 2000 attack and defense. So, I'm wondering if this could potentially hint at we're getting more dinosaur support, because I mean, maybe that's just very cope, but I would really like to see more dinosaur support, and just putting in another card that hurts a deck nobody's playing seems a little bit irrelevant. So maybe we'll get our dinosaur fusion sooner rather than later. But that is basically it for everything that we had revealed. So it's only actually a few days until Go Rush releases. I hope everyone has enough gems saved up to get everything they'll need from the 2 mini boxes and the 2 structures. But thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.